Okay, I wanted to talk briefly about what I mean when I say we should read a play with our theatrical imagination. Now, if you were able to listen in to our virtual class session recently, you will have an idea of what I'm talking about. But essentially what I mean is we have to remember that plays, right, drama, they were composed to be performed. They were composed to be performed on a stage. So when we're reading a play, we're really only experiencing one dimension of the play. It's a very important dimension. That is, like without the text, without the script, we don't have a play. But we have to remember that what we are reading is a script. It is the text written for actors to perform on a stage. And that is true from the ancient Greeks all the way up through the modern day. We are reading a script. So we're actually only experiencing one dimension, again, a very important dimension, a foundational dimension of the play. But when we read, we have to do everything we can to remember this is a performance text, and that means, or a script, and that means we have to think about not just the words on the page, but how does an actor say the words on the page? How do the actors bring these words to life into the real dramatic situation that they are trying to communicate in the play? It involves actually also not just how they say the lines, but how the actor is present on the stage, how the action unfolds before us on the stage. What they're wearing, where they're standing, how they gesture, their facial expressions, any movement they're doing, all of that is part of the meaning of a drama and the range of possible meanings of a drama. Let me give you two examples from Oedipus to illustrate what I mean. First of all, let's talk about the ways in which the text on the page doesn't give us everything that might be meaningful in a play, but instead opens up ranges of possible meanings and possibilities for actors and actresses. If we look at Oedipus, I'm using this online free version, which is kind of a crappy translation-ish, but it gives us what we need. But if we think about Scene 3 in the play Oedipus, okay? There's a scene where the messenger comes in to tell Oedipus that Polybos, his father, it's really his adopted father, has died. And Jocasta, which is Oedipus's wife, and also his mother, is on stage talking with the messenger. Oedipus comes in, and the three of them have a conversation. We can see it here. This is that early part of Scene 3, where Jocasta is speaking here, and then Oedipus, Jocasta and Oedipus, and then Jocasta and Oedipus and the messenger. What I want to point out, though, and you can see this in your own text, is Jocasta speaks this last line, this line here, but your father's death, that at least is a great blessing, joy to the eyes. And then Oedipus and the messenger have a bunch of dialogue. What we need to notice here is that Jocasta speaks this line here. But then, if we scan here, Oedipus and the messenger have this dialogue back and forth in which the messenger describes to Oedipus not just Polybos' death, but the fact that Polybos is not his real father, right? And Oedipus is learning this, or being reminded of it if he's forgotten about it, right? And Oedipus and the messenger speak, and Jocasta says nothing. She's gone. Now, if we're reading this text, we see that Jocasta's not saying anything. And we might, in fact, be tempted when we're reading it to think, well, Jocasta's gone. We don't even think about her. It's just Oedipus and the messenger. But the reality is, Jocasta delivers this line, your father's death, that at least is a great blessing, joy to the eyes. And then she's gone. But wait, she's not gone. She's not gone at all. You look down here, she speaks again several dozen lines later. Right here. She jumps in when Oedipus refers back to her. Jocasta, remember the man we sent for? Is that the one he means? And then Jocasta, here, she says, that man. Why ask? Old shepherd, talk, empty nonsense. Don't give it another thought. Don't even think. And it goes on from there. Because it becomes clear by this point, Jocasta has already figured it all out. Right? She knows, and by the end of the scene, she's telling Oedipus, you don't want to know this. It's terrible. You will be essentially cursed for knowing this because she's put it together. What is she doing on stage for all of these lines? She's on stage, right? If we just look at the text, we might forget about her, but she's on stage. She has to be. It is very clear for the fact that she speaks this line here. There's no exit for her marked anywhere. And she speaks again. And she speaks again after Oedipus talks to her as if she has been there. So here's the issue. With a theatrical imagination, we have to ask ourselves, what's the actress doing while Oedipus and the messenger are talking? What's she up to? What does her face look like? Where is she standing? Does she pace? Does she stand by Oedipus? Does she move away from Oedipus? Do you see recognition come across her face all at once? And if so, at what line, at what point does she recognize the truth? And does she communicate to the audience with her face or in some other non-spoken way that she recognizes the truth? Or maybe it doesn't come all at once. Maybe there are several moments of recognition as she listens to this dialogue. We don't know. The play text, the script, doesn't tell us. The actress has to figure that out, or the director has to help her figure that out. And it could be different for any performance. But the bottom line is, if you're going to perform this play, that is a question, a performance question you have to answer, because Jocasta has to be on stage. She has to be doing something. Even if she's doing nothing, that's doing something, right? Because then we have this weird sort of actress on stage who's not doing anything. My point here is that even what's not spoken when we read with a theatrical imagination is something that presents performance possibilities. Jocasta is on stage. She is silent for a number of lines. She is listening to what is going on, and the actress needs to be doing something. How does she do it? What does she do? What does it tell us about her until she speaks again? Now knowing at this point down here, now knowing the full truth, she's figured it out. That all happened non-verbally, and an actress has to figure that out in a production, in a performance. That's part of what it means to read with a theatrical imagination. What possibilities for meaning does a script open up for us? One other example from Oedipus, the last line that Creon speaks at the very end of this play. I've put it here because the version in our text is a little better. At the very end of the play, Oedipus says, "No, don't take them from me," meaning his daughters. And Creon has these last spoken lines of the play. The chorus has an epilogue, but this is the last spoken line of the actual action of the play. Creon says, "Think no longer that you are in command here, but rather think how when you were, you served your own destruction." Okay, so that seems like a pretty declarative line. But how does Creon say it? Does he proclaim it publicly? Is it a final act of politics for Creon? Think no longer that you are in command here, but rather think how when you were, you served your own destruction. Is he proclaiming it to the chorus and to the people of Thebes? And by doing so, is he making himself king? Because he's clearly saying that he's implying he is king now, right? That he's saying that he is no longer, Oedipus is no longer in command, but that Creon is. Does Creon speak this, confirming what we might have suspected? Maybe Creon has been realizing he's going to become king, and now is his moment to formalize that, so he proclaims this solemnly? He could do it that way. We could see Creon here as a conniver who, at least in some ways, was realistic enough to know that he was going to be king, and now he is seizing his moment, telling Oedipus you're no longer in command, and slapping a nice moral lesson on at the end. That's one possibility. Does Creon whisper it to Oedipus? Is it clear that maybe Creon says this line to Oedipus more emotionally? Think no longer that you are in command here, but rather think how when you were, you served your own destruction. Maybe Creon doesn't say it publicly as a proclamation. Maybe he says it to Oedipus as a brother-in-law and as a nephew. Maybe he says it compassionately, realizing that Oedipus is in the most terrible state a human being could possibly imagine at some level. And maybe it's a compassionate Creon who says this, telling Oedipus how it is. Maybe he's weeping with Oedipus, and the lines are said through his tears. These are all possibilities for the line. Creon, the actor, depending on what his notion of Creon is as a character, and depending on what the director of the production wants Creon to be, could help us determine how this simple line is said. It could be anything from a solemn proclamation of political power, declaring Oedipus exile and seizing power for himself, up to a familial whisper of compassion and emotion. All those possibilities are enabled by the text. And if you read with a theatrical imagination, you don't just see these as the words Crayon speaks, but you see the potential for what these words could mean and how they could be spoken, and how that performance choice, whatever performance choice Crayon goes with here, tells us more about Crayon. And it's a lot more than just what's on the page. It's about how that is performed, how an actor brings these words to life and performs them. So keep that in mind as you read. Read with a theatrical imagination. Read always remembering that what you are reading is a script that is only fully alive when it is being performed by real flesh and blood actors on the stage.